How to quiet your inner critic. Having some degree of inner criticism is normal, and for most people, it helps improve productivity. However, an overly critical view of yourself is actually damaging to your mental health and your sense of self-esteem. By learning how to recognize abnormal levels of self-criticism and finding ways to change your attitude toward yourself, you can overcome your anxious thought patterns and silence your inner critic. Part 1: Addressing Self-Criticism. 1. Recognize undeserved criticism. Everyone criticizes themselves once in a while. However, individuals with a healthy attitude tend to know when to disengage and stop criticizing themselves. If you criticize yourself constantly or are unusually harsh with yourself, you may need to work on silencing your inner critic. Ask yourself whether you would criticize a friend or relative the way you criticize yourself. Assess how often you criticize yourself and how long it usually persists. Do you find yourself obsessing about your performance, appearance, or abilities? Do you replay conversations or actions trying to find things to criticize? 2. Be aware of your emotions. An important component of transforming self-criticism is recognizing how you feel throughout the day. You may have reached a point where you criticize yourself without consciously thinking about it. If you have, taking an inventory of your thoughts and feelings can help you become more aware of your self-criticism. Try to recognize when you feel angry, impatient, or frustrated with yourself. This is often a sign that you have been criticizing yourself or are about to criticize yourself. Keep a written record of your emotions whenever you catch yourself engaging in self-criticism. Over time, this may help you identify negative thought patterns and triggering circumstances. 3. Consider seeking medical assistance. For some people, a harsh inner critic stems from a drive for perfection and can be easily transformed. Others, though, may experience inner criticism as a symptom of anxiety or depression. If you're having a hard time stopping your inner critic, or if you experience other symptoms of mental illness like prolonged feelings of hopelessness or avoidance of things you used to enjoy, find a therapist as soon as possible. Ask your doctor to recommend a therapist to you. You can also find a therapist in your region by searching online. If your doctor determines that you have a mental illness like anxiety or depression, you can also ask your doctor about whether medication might be right for you. Part 2: Transforming Self-Criticism. 1. Label your thoughts as thoughts. It is important to recognize that your thoughts are just thoughts and also to identify whether your thoughts are truth or not truth. Keep in mind that sometimes thoughts can be random, untrue, and even purposeless. However, you can decide how you will respond to your thoughts. One good way to handle untrue or unhelpful thoughts is to label them as such and then allow them to pass by, like watching a cloud float away. For example, imagine you have the thought, "I did something wrong. I never get it right." This is an extreme statement because making one mistake does not mean that you will never figure out how to do something correctly. Therefore, you could label the thought as untrue and unhelpful in this moment, then let it pass you by like a cloud without allowing it to make you feel anxious or self-conscious. Try saying something to yourself like, "I'm having the thought that I will never get this right. However, this is just a thought and this thought is untrue and unhelpful." 2. Talk to your inner critic. Your inner critic may be constantly nagging you and saying things to pull you down. To silence this voice, you may need to start talking to your inner critic. Address your inner critic with compassion and kindness because it is part of you. Don't get upset with your inner critic, such as by chastising, yelling, or name-calling. Show only compassion and empathy as you address your inner critic. For example, you might say something like, "Inner critic, I know you are worried about always getting it right, but sometimes there is no exact right way. I know you're anxious and it's going to be okay. I've handled things well in the past and I can do it again now. It's time to be quiet because I can take it from here." You can even name your inner critic if that helps you. For example, you might call your inner critic Critical Charlie or Nagging Nancy. 3. Identify your ideal outcome. Instead of blindly criticizing your efforts and outcomes for how they turn out, focus on figuring out what it is you really want. For example, instead of thinking, "I'm never going to get a promotion at work because I'm the worst employee," try to identify an attainable goal, in this case, a promotion, and work out a strategy to reach that goal. Focus on creating attainable goals and celebrating your victories, no matter how small they may seem. 4. Keep a journal of your thoughts. Journaling is an excellent way to track your thoughts and feelings over time. You may already write when you catch yourself engaging in self-criticism, but by making journaling a daily habit, you can develop a stronger sense of what you think or feel and why. Make journaling a daily practice by devoting time to the practice. You can also set an alarm on your phone or a reminder on your calendar to spend some time journaling every day. Look for patterns and trends in the ways you react to your circumstances. Take note of both the times you engage in self-criticism and the times you're able to silence your inner critic. 5. Assess the reality of the situation. Anytime you find yourself engaging in self-criticism, try to take a step back and examine the actual thoughts you're having. For example, if you find yourself thinking, "I'm such a loser at basketball and I'd be better off quitting the team," consider factors like how long you've been playing, how often you practice, and how skilled your competitors are. Recognize that sometimes others may be better than you at certain activities. This doesn't reflect poorly on you, it just means they might have more experience than you. 6. Soften your criticism. It's natural to have critical thoughts from time to time, but your criticism should never be destructive. Instead of using harsh criticisms that tear down your self-esteem, try softened statements that reframe the issue. Instead of thinking, "I'm a failure and I'm no good at my job," try thinking something softened, such as, "I know there are things I could do differently at work. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm working on it." Reframing your criticism this way doesn't shirk your own responsibility for bettering yourself. It simply takes the harsh sting out of your criticism, making it more constructive and productive. 7. Work on improving yourself. Sometimes there are actual faults you may need to improve in yourself. Rather than criticizing your whole self, acknowledge that you may need to work on specific, changeable things like your behavior or your attitude towards someone or something. For example, instead of thinking, "I'm a failure and a loser," you might instead say something like, "I'm not doing well right now, but I can improve things by working on my typing skills." Find ways to track your progress by setting smaller daily or weekly goals. These smaller goals should help you work towards achieving your larger, big-picture goals. You should also work on changing undesirable situations outside yourself. This can help set you up for success by removing external obstacles that would otherwise hinder you. As an example, if you're having a hard time studying at home, try changing where you study or removing distractions like television, music, text messages, and internet access. 8. Praise your good qualities. While you may have some shortcomings in certain areas of your life, you undoubtedly have other things that you excel at. Instead of focusing on the negative, acknowledge the things that you are good at. For example, even if you're bad at sports, you might be very creative, a good problem solver, or a loyal and trustworthy friend. If you're having a hard time identifying your own good qualities, try looking at the best qualities of your friends. Then take it a step further and consider that you must also have those qualities if your friends spend time with you. You can also ask your friends to help you identify your best qualities. Work on figuring out what you're good at and what makes you a good, likable person in other people's eyes. Part 3. Practicing self-care. 1. Step back when you need to. Everyone needs to take a time out from their problems once in a while. There's nothing wrong with needing to step back and calm yourself before tackling an important task. Ultimately, taking the time to step back will help you approach your problem with a clearer head and improve your chances of success. Whenever you're feeling overwhelmed or you catch yourself starting to think critically, take a step back from your problems. Try going for a walk, listening to music, or meditating to clear your mind. If possible, give yourself some time before returning to the situation with a clearer head. Some people may need up to 24 hours to reframe their perspective and totally silence their inner critic, but even 5 to 10 minutes can help. 2. Take better care of your body. When your body feels good, your mind often feels better as well. That's why many doctors advise patients with anxiety and depression to focus on self-care. When all of your needs are being met and you're practicing physical activities that relieve stress, you'll notice yourself feeling better and criticizing yourself less. Eat a balanced, healthy diet. Get 3 meals each day and intermittent snacks as needed, but choose low-fat, low-sugar foods like fresh fruits and vegetables. Exercise regularly. Aim to get at least 30 minutes of exercise each day, 5 days every week. Get enough sleep each night. Everyone's sleep needs will vary, but most people generally need between 7 and 10 hours of sleep each night. 3. Stop aiming for perfection. If you're constantly criticizing yourself harshly, you may need to consider what your expectations are on a day-to-day basis. No one can achieve perfection, so it's important to allow yourself to celebrate your efforts, no matter what the outcome may be. Take stock in the fact that you're trying your best. Let yourself acknowledge the work that you do and take stock of the time and dedication it takes. 4. Be kind and constructive in your criticism. Silencing your inner critic doesn't mean you'll see yourself as perfect from now on. Everyone has flaws and undesirable behaviors they engage in from time to time. The goal is learning to criticize yourself constructively, without being mean or harsh to yourself. For example, instead of thinking to yourself, "I'm incompetent and unskilled at my job," you might think something like, "I'm trying my best, but I have room to improve. I really need to work on reducing my turnaround time on assignments," so that's the first thing you'll focus on going forward.